From the Rogue Word Studio in Dallas, Texas, it's The Lit Show with Jeremy Fee. New episode each Tuesday. Authors welcome, comments encouraged. Hello everyone, welcome to The Lit Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Fee. As always, I've got something special for you today. It's time for our January 2022 reading wrap-up book battle and the TBR for February 2022. But first, I would like to address the frog in the room. My throat still is not back up to normal. 3 videos ago, I just did no voice, put some music and graphics on the screen. Last week, I talked, but I put a graphic up, said I've got a frog in my throat, and I guess I need that graphic again this week. But what do? I mean, the whole world is sick. It's pretty crazy these days. Hopefully my voice will be back to normal next week. You'll just have to tune in to find out, I guess. But with no further ado, let's get into the book battle info. I read way more than I wanted to this month, and by this month I mean January. I was so excited about my read every play by William Shakespeare goal that I have, that I pushed through The War of the Roses. And I even did a reread Richard III, which is a play that I studied back when I was taking graduate classes, and I did enjoy, but upon actually experiencing the entire War of the Roses historical play series and seeing it as a culmination of that, I really enjoyed it even more this time. I'm going to speed things up a little bit, and I'm just going to go ahead and give you the results of the first bracket. But I do want to make a note, after having a lot of fun doing the end of the year book battle last time, with them just being in the order by months, I've decided to no longer group the plays by genre and just put them in my reading order for the month, because I think that it allowed me to have better discussions in comparing them. But anyway, the first bracket is going to be all the same anyway, having said that. It's these plays by William Shakespeare representing the War of the Roses. I'm just going to go ahead and say that they got progressively better, and for this first bracket, Richard III is going to be the winner as the final play in the War of the Roses series, and that gives you a little sneak peek of one of the 4 works that's going to make it to semifinals. Now let's go through the actual battles for the rest of them. In our second bracket, so to speak, we've got Immigrant American by Betoba. I knew Eve back in the day when he was in high school. I taught him and his brother. Really great family, really wonderful students. And so I wanted to read this book that Eve wrote. It is about the fact that he was born in Africa, in a nation full of turmoil and change, and then his family had to experience everything that was going on there, survive that, and then they decided to immigrate to the United States of America. And he tells the story of his life, what it was like from his point of view, experiencing all of that. And I found it really fascinating, because it's always neat when you know someone and they write a book about their life and their experiences, because you find out so much more about them. But I think that people in general would really enjoy the book. I say check it out. It's a wonderful read. I also read A Room with a View, which was one of my BookTube spin winners from spin 4, the first one. It's a romance. I just think maybe I wasn't really in the mood for it this month necessarily. I'm going to go ahead and say out of the 2 of them, I'm advancing Immigrant American. I admit I have bias because I know the author. And then for the next pairing here in this bracket, we have The Hay Bell by Priscilla Bettis, who is an amazing commenter here on YouTube, especially in the HorrorTube community. Though Priscilla Bettis does not have a YouTube channel, you will find comments on a lot of YouTubers, HorrorTubers, BookTubers, and this was actually a short story, which I suppose you could call a novella. I read it on my Kindle, so I don't know an exact page count, but it feels more like short story length than novella length. I'm still putting it here, as if it's its own book, because you can go on Amazon for like 99 cents and get it, which is a really good deal. It's a great horror story, a lot of fun to read. It's up against Dragons of the Dwarven Depths. It was spin number 3, second spin runner. Fell behind in my reading. I planned to read that months ago and did not. And part of that was because spin
3 was the first time that Rick McDonald did a bonus spin. And so I was like, well, it's just a bonus one. I don't have to read it immediately. But I did want to read it in general. Several people on BookTube have gone back and read Dragonlance, the Dragonlance Chronicles and Legends and other books. And a lot of people were saying they don't necessarily stand the test of time. I read them when I was a teenager and really enjoyed them. But I hadn't read this one yet because they just kept writing more and more books in the series, and I didn't get around to all of them. So reading this book brought back a lot of nostalgia. I was super excited. The first time that Raceland appeared in the story, I was like, yes, it's Raceland, one of my favorite characters. And I love the banter back and forth between the characters, though I will admit, the characters came across as really immature, and I realized that as a nostalgia read, I do enjoy it, but it's not the highest quality literature. I completely understand that, and I can understand how someone who doesn't have that nostalgic feel for the series might not want to commit to reading all the books in the series in order to experience it. I totally get that. The better quality writing is from Priscilla Bettis with The Hay Bale, so I'm going to advance that story, though again admit I may have a little bit of bias. It's still better writing though. For our next bracket, we've got Strong Bones, which had a cover on NetGalley that looked a lot like Stranger Things. You know, it's got that kind of vibe going on with the book, and I really liked that. I got it from NetGalley. I always appreciate getting free ebooks from them in order to read. It was a fun read, an interesting story. If you like nostalgic books like Ready Player One that have a lot of pop culture references, or stories like Stranger Things with kids investigating what's going on with weird mysteries, then you would enjoy the book probably. It's up against Alien Covenant Origins. There are a bunch of movies in the Alien series, and one of those movies is Alien Covenant. This is not the novelization for Alien Covenant, the film. This is a prequel book to Alien Covenant. Alan Dean Foster writes a lot of movie novelizations, Star Trek, Star Wars, writes a lot of his own books. He's one of my favorite writers. This was a fun book. It was a good read. It was not amazing quality literature, kind of like I said about Dragonlance, but it was a fun read, interesting to find out more about the Alien universe. Out of those two books, Strong Bones and Alien Covenant Origins, I would say I actually enjoyed the Alien Covenant Origins book more, though nothing against Strong Bones. The next pairing is The Governor, which is a really interesting story. Lenny McLean. This is non-fiction, but it's fascinating. This guy's life story, everything he did, his criminal activities, involvement with, I want to say illegal boxing, but it's just a different type of boxing, getting involved with the mafia, all kinds of stuff. Very interesting real life perspective of this person. It is up against The Age of Shadows, which is book 2 in the Song of Echoes series, which is wonderful, epic fantasy. The author of this book, R.E. Palmer, sent me a free ebook to read, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the first book in the series, so I was looking forward to the second one. Out of these two books, I'm going with The Age of Shadows as the winner, just because they're both delightful, enjoyable reads, but the epic fantasy has that epic quality to it. At the fourth bracket, I went ahead and pushed through the rest of the Dark Tower. I told myself one of my goals for this year, this calendar year, is to finish series. And so I went ahead and read The Dark Tower 5, 6, and 7. We've got Wolves of the Kala up against Song of Susanna. Both of them were good. Normally in a series, I say that they progressively get better, but out of this pairing, I'm going to go with Wolves of the Kala because I liked that it felt more like a fantasy story. It was kind of a Western fantasy out on the frontier. This group of bad guys called the Wolves were threatening a community. They needed help. And you've got the gunslinger and his crew who are trying to help them, trying to save the lives of the children so the children won't be taken and have horrible things happen to them from these bad guys. I know some people complain in the series that it feels kind of like a detour when really the series has a lot of detours, but it is overall a fantasy series by Stephen King, and it felt very much like a fantasy to me, so I enjoyed it more. Though book 6 was really interesting, Song of Susanna. while it's good, it kind of suffers from setting up the final battle, the final book. And that brings me to the next pairing, Dark Tower Book 7, The Dark Tower. It is up against the Wheel of Time Book 9. Finally, after months and months, I am getting back to trying to finish the Wheel of Time series, as I said, with my goal to finish series. This is a tough battle to do. I'm going to give it to Stephen King's book, The Dark Tower, as the culmination of the series because there are epic moments in it. I do have some problems with the series, but overall, I feel like it was a great accomplishment by Stephen King to complete the series, make it come together. And what's really interesting is his own commentary and I'm not giving you spoilers here, but the ending that he provides for the series and for that book is the ending that is necessary for it. It's not necessarily the ending that people want, but it is the ending that's necessary. There are some things that just didn't make sense to me, but it's fantasy, so I'm going to allow that. And it's not just fantasy, it's multiverse fantasy. Some weird things there, but I'm going to give it the win over the Wheel of Time Book 9, which is a part of what people call the slog. Oh, the slog for the Wheel of Time. I do enjoy the politics of the Aes Sedai society, but some of this plotting feels very repetitive. But I'm happy to say I'm excited about the Wheel of Time again. I think the TV series helped give me a new vision of what the characters could look like and think like. Even though they made a lot of changes for the TV series, it got me excited about reading the books again. Alright, that means we now need to do our next round. After prelims, it's quarterfinals. I already told you up there in the first bracket that we're just advancing Richard III to semifinals. In the second bracket, we've got Immigrant American up against The Hay Bell. Both great reads. Both stories that I really enjoyed. Immigrant American is actually only about 100 pages, and The Hay Bell is a short story being sold on its own. So they're both very short, very easy to read. When it comes to overall enjoyment for reading, I'm going to give it to The Hay Bell by Priscilla Bettis. As a horror story, it is amazing. It is just wonderful. The atmosphere, the feelings. So it really accomplishes what it needs to as a horror story. It's going to advance to semifinals as well. For our third bracket, we've got Alien Covenant Origins up against The Age of Shadows, Book 2 and Song of Echoes. Alan Dean Foster is one of my favorite authors, but he just does an okay job in Alien Covenant Origins, so I'm going to give this win to Age of Shadows, the epic fantasy. The two main characters really mature a lot. It's a coming-of-age epic fantasy story, two main points of view, and I enjoyed their journey from the first one, and it was interesting to see how as people they continue to transform in this fantasy environment. And that brings us to the last bracket. Dark Tower Book 5 against Dark Tower Book 7. I'm going to go ahead and give it to the final book in the series, though it's a close call for me. I really enjoyed Book 5, but Stephen King really does a lot with the multiverse and having things come together at the end. It's sort of like the MCU, the big accomplishment with an Avengers level movie of everything coming together. Semifinals. I love looking at the Final Four each month. The Final Four. The Big Four. My 4 best reads of the month. We've got Richard III up against The Hay Bell and Age of Shadows against The Dark Tower. Looking at that first pairing, as much as I enjoyed the writing of Priscilla Bettis, Richard III is one of the greatest works of literature of all time. So Richard III is going to get the win in that pair and advance to finals. Upon my reread of Richard III, I didn't like it as much the first time I read it, but wow, when you experience the entire series for the War of the Roses, it really has more of an impact. Something that I should have mentioned earlier is that the Richard III character, I should have realized this, but it didn't occur to me that he would be in the 3 plays before that one, Henry VI, Part 1, 2, and 3. When he's younger, he is involved in the politics and the war and everything going on. So you actually get to see his character develop over the story of those 4 plays, which is a culmination of the politics going back with the previous plays. A lot there. But I need to point out, he is one of the most vile, evil, despicable characters in all of literature. The other pairing for semifinals, Age of Shadows against the Dark Tower, both epic fantasy, both part of a series. I'm gonna give the win to Stephen King's book just because it's the culmination of that. But I did really enjoy Age of Shadows. That brings us to finals. William Shakespeare's Richard III up against Stephen King's The Dark Tower, Book 7. This is a great finals. These are both really interesting stories that are the end of a series that have well-developed characters who've been through a whole lot to get where they are, to try to accomplish their goals. Though Richard III's goal is evil, murdering people to become king and try and hold on to power, as opposed to the gunslinger who just wants to get to the Dark Tower and see the Dark Tower. Of course, accomplishing a lot of good along the way, vanquishing a lot of evil, and that sort of thing. In the end, I'm going to give it to Richard III by William Shakespeare. Still want to give you my we'll call it a potential TBR for February 2022. Nothing too solid here. I just would like to push through the wheel of time. I know I've said it before. There have been at least 1 or 2 months where I've said I'm going to try and push through the wheel of time as much as possible. But really, I'm enjoying listening to the audiobooks while doing other stuff. My TBR for this month might just be trying to finish the wheel of time and finish my Read Every Play by William Shakespeare challenge. I believe I have 7 Shakespearean plays left. That's how many I haven't read yet. So it'd be great. With the Wheel of Time, I've got books 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I've got 5 books in the Wheel of Time. 5 books from the Wheel of Time, 7 Shakespearean plays. That's enough, really, for the month. But if I get around to it, I would like to read some Dane Cobain books. I was hoping to read Garden of the Moon, start my Malazan, however you pronounce it, journey. But I decided it's more important to me right now to prioritize finishing series before I start that new one. And a book that I'm definitely going to read in February is going to be Book 2 of the Last Roman series. The author, B.K. Greenwood, has been kind enough to contact me via email and let me know he's sending me autographed copies. I read Book 1 in the series as an ebook and talked about his website when I did my video about it, that he's got signed, autographed author copies you can buy directly from him, from his website, which is really neat. And I guess he appreciated me talking about it in the video. So hopefully it'll be in the mail here soon, and I'll be able to read it and get a review up about it. That's probably it, though. Wish me well with my reading. As always, please comment down below. Let me know what book you were rooting for, or if you agree or disagree with my choices, whatever you found interesting from the book battle, the TBR, if you have recommendations for me, or anything like that. As always, I appreciate you. The support from you means a lot to me. Thank you very much. Every Tuesday is a good Tuesday for a book battle or a book talk. Peace.